All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to tackle something so basic, so fundamental to our experience that we hardly ever stop to think about it. And that is the self. You know, that constant, solid feeling of me that's right at the very center of your world. No, really, just for a second, think about it. Who is the you that's listening to these words? Is it a soul? A little person inside your head driving the ship? Is it just consciousness floating around behind your eyes? Whatever it is, it feels incredibly real, doesn't it? And that feeling is just so powerful. We all live life as the main character in our own movie. We feel like this single, solid person who's been the same person since we were a kid. It's probably the most natural, intuitive feeling we have. But what if that feeling, that deep down intuition, is completely wrong? What if, as the writer Robert Wright suggests, our sense of self is really just a masterful illusion, a kind of mental matrix that we're all living inside? It's a pretty wild idea, I know, but it's one that's been explored for thousands of years in philosophy, and weirdly enough, modern science is starting to catch up. So let's see just how deep this rabbit hole goes. So our first stop is a core concept from Buddhist philosophy that directly attacks our sense of who we are. It's a doctrine called anatta, which translates to no self. Now, you have to understand just how radical this was at the time. Most ancient philosophies were all about the idea of an eternal, unchanging soul, something called the Atman. And then the brutal comes along and says, yeah, about that, I've looked and there's nothing there. He taught that if you actually look for this permanent, solid core inside yourself, you're not going to find it. And this chart really nails the difference. In the West, we have Descartes with his famous line, I think, therefore I am. It puts a solid I, a thinker, right at the center of everything. But the Buddhist view is totally different. It says there isn't a permanent thinker. There's just thinking. There's a stream of consciousness. The self isn't a thing. It's a process. It's not a noun. It's a verb. So if there's no solid you, then what are we? Well, according to this view, we're a combination of 5 things, called the aggregates. It's kind of like a recipe for a person. First, you've got your physical body, your form. Then there are your feelings, just the raw data of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral sensations. After that, you've got perceptions, which is your mind labeling everything. That's a bird, this is a phone. Then come your mental formations. This is the juicy stuff, your thoughts, your habits, your opinions, your moods. And finally, there's consciousness, which is just the basic awareness of all the other 4. The big reveal is that there's no separate you managing all this. You are the collection of these 5 processes, constantly changing and flowing together. A really good way to think about it in modern terms is that there's no CEO in your brain. There's no little pilot in a control room pulling all the levers. There's just this incredibly complex dance of these temporary parts. The feeling that there's a single me in charge is just a side effect of this whole system working together. It's not the boss. Now hold on, because this is where the idea gets even bigger. This concept of no self doesn't just apply to you and me. It applies to, well, everything, the entire world around us. There's this incredible line from a text called the Diamond Sutra, and it says that everything we experience, everything in the whole world, is like a dream, an illusion, a bubble in a stream. They seem solid and real, but they're actually just these fleeting, temporary processes. Okay, this is a really, really crucial point. When Buddhist philosophy talks about emptiness or shunyata, it does not mean that nothing exists. That's nihilism, which is a totally different thing. What it actually means is that nothing exists independently. Everything is empty of a separate, standalone identity. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh had a beautiful way of explaining this. He'd say, look at a flower. Is it just a flower? No. A flower is also made of things that are not the flower. It's made of sunshine, rain, the soil, the air. If you take away the sunshine, the flower disappears. It has no independent existence. It's empty of a separate self. And in that emptiness, it's profoundly connected to the entire universe, just like us. Now, I get it. This can all sound a bit mystical or abstract. But this is the amazing part. Modern science, especially evolutionary psychology, is getting to a very similar conclusion, just from a totally different direction. So here's the scientific take. Natural selection has one goal, and one goal only: survive and pass on your genes. It doesn't care about truth or seeing reality clearly. And it turns out having a really strong, convincing feeling of a solid me, that CEO in the brain, is a fantastic survival tool. It makes us fight for resources, protect our reputation, and worry about the future. But here's the punchline. That very same programming, that useful delusion that kept our ancestors alive, is now the engine for almost all of our modern anxiety, craving, and suffering. Our brains are essentially hardwired for dissatisfaction. It's a profound idea, right? Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment below, I'd love to hear what you think. Your support really means a lot and helps me keep creating content for you all. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, so if our sense of self is just an evolutionary trick that makes us suffer, what are we supposed to do about it? Well, this is where the philosophy goes from just being a diagnosis to offering a real solution. The whole point of seeing through the illusion is to become free from the suffering it causes. The goal of this whole path is something called nirvana. But let's be clear, nirvana is not some magical heaven you go to when you die. The word literally means to extinguish, like blowing out a candle. What's being extinguished? The fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. Basically, that faulty evolutionary programming we've been talking about. It is the ultimate freedom, a deep sense of peace that you can find right here in this life. And this is where it all gets super practical. When you start to really see that the self is more like a process than a permanent thing, you stop being so invested in defending it all the time. The constant anxiety, the endless craving for more, it can all start to cool down. You start to feel more connected to other people. It's about finding freedom from the exhausting, full-time job of being me. So the ultimate takeaway here isn't that you have to destroy yourself or pretend you don't exist. The self is a useful tool for getting by in the world, kind of like your name. The real liberation comes from understanding that it's just a tool. It's just a process. It's not the totality of who you are. And when you see it for what it is, you can hold it all so much more lightly. And this brings us to one final huge question to leave you with. If this powerful, deeply felt sense of self is just an illusion, a story created by our mental processes, then whose mind is creating it? I'll let you chew on that one. Thanks for watching.